We now have a full view of Activision-Blizzard's business plan, what all three business units are going to be doing in the future. With the questionable microtransaction situation of Black Ops 4, the promise of Modern Warfare as a game, but the lingering concerns over its monetization model, as well as Blizzard's mixed success, we certainly have a lot to get into. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another report, the regular series where we take a deeper dive into aspects of the gaming industry. So, Activision-Blizzard's Q2 2019 earnings call has happened, and the key takeaways for consumers are a mixed bag. First though, there's YouTube changes that seem to be de-emphasizing independent news sources. Yup, they seem to be continuing, seems to be a thing. Now subscribing and bell ringing is pretty much all we can do, and that's evidenced by a new bar they've started showing creators. Your support's already helped increase that number quite a bit, so be sure to click that bell, and thank you very much for staying with us. Okay, Bobby Kotick took the lead with some key stats, saying that the results exceeded their prior outlook, and then going on to say that they are prioritizing investment in key franchises and that they expect to expand reach, deepen engagement, and drive player investment as a result of that. He says they are only scratching the surface of their existing franchises from their perspective, and that they are focused on delivering more frequent, more compelling, and more engaging content, and apparently this is already working out okay for them. Bobby then went on to promote the most important aspects of each business segment. So, Blizz is celebrating World of Warcraft's 15th anniversary with Classic. He mentioned the over 100 million lifetime player figure, and then he went on to say that they are working hard to make this year's BlizzCon the best that they've ever hosted for the 40,000 people who are going to be attending. As to what that can mean for BlizzCon, well, we're going to get into that later on in this video. Over at Activision, he said that more platforms, more countries, more players is the new Call of Duty battle cry, with mobile and Modern Warfare coming to drive the series to a greater scale than ever before. And then with King, he said that Candy Crush continues to crush it. As for esports, which they love hyping up so much, I mean, it really tires me, but he said that they are a global industry leader and that the Call of Duty Global League is launching soon, and they've recently sold 8 team spots at a higher rate than they did for the Overwatch League spots. And man, those Overwatch League team spots were stupid expensive. Anyway, on that, the Overwatch League is breaking viewership records, and their Stage 2 finals became the best performing esports broadcast across ESPN and ABC, which I doubt's really a high bar, and I mean, they're pretty inflated views. It's not like anyone would ever, sort of view bot and embed for their stream. That would never, ever happen for an esports event, ever. But regardless, they are being quite bullish in esports, aren't they? Now, let's have a look a little bit closer at what they've said about their core franchises: Call of Duty, Candy Crush, Warcraft, Hearthstone, Overwatch, and Diablo, which they all mention by name. First off, Activision's favorite child, Call of Duty. On the topic of Black Ops 4, they said really nothing unexpected. Their new strategy to push out fast updates and keep content flowing works pretty much as they intended, resulting in improved daily engagement. Their delivery of more compelling in-game experiences left Black Ops 4 with higher engagement and net bookings from in-game items than World War II, with hours played growing 50% year on year in comparison. Now, World War II did pretty well, and I think if anything, this does show you that the business model in some ways is working for them. Anyway, Call of Duty Mobile is something that they're hedging their bets on, although it seems already to be a very clear winner, with a lot of uptake in their soft launches, a lot of pre-sign up interest, and just generally it seems like that's going to do very well in a large number of markets. Anyway, the next entry to the series, Modern Warfare, is something they seem to be extremely confident in. I mean, it could just be marketing bluster, but their CEO said it was an incredible rebirth of a celebrated series, and that Modern Warfare is breathtaking, and that there are just no words for it. He really does big it up, talking about the planned gameplay features like gunfight and spec ops. Basically, they're just flexing to investors, explaining that it's going to have a large post-release content pipeline, although he did not mention how hard it will be monetized. From my perspective, it does look like a pretty incredible game. Actually, it seems to be sniping away a bit of what I liked from Battlefield, so could be interesting, but again, monetization concerns. Later in the Q&A, the Activision president explains that they want to keep one massive community by including crossplay and having no season pass. They were also asked how the live service model interferes with their yearly releases, and as it turns out, they're more than happy to have their yearly refresh. They said that each new release of a Call of Duty game brings back lapsed players, sort of brings them into the fold, and it gives them a chance to innovate on the games and make better experiences, which, I mean, yes, is hard to argue with, but I also do imagine that the extra, many $million has something to do with it. Then elsewhere, Activision are happy with their efforts remastering old intellectual property. The sales of Spyro and the Crash games have been actually very significant, and that's going to be a vital part of their strategy moving forward. So they're looking at their back catalogue, and we maybe will see other games getting the same treatment. As for what? Well, that actually might be hard to tell. They don't have anything that I think will hit as hard as Crash or Spyro did, except for maybe the Tony Hawk games, although with those games I imagine they need to sort out quite a lot of licensing to make them work. We might get more of a reveal, or at least some hints at Gamescom, as they are a part of Opening Night Live's lineup. They also said they have new intellectual property in the works, and after the recent success of Sekiro, which shipped almost 4 million copies, I would not be surprised if they are waiting in line to get their hands on another FromSoft project. Next up, let's talk about Blizzard Entertainment, who are seemingly borrowing from the Call of Duty approach. World of Warcraft saw subscriber growth thanks to the Rise of Ashara patch being quite well received from players, and just the hype train from Classic doing well. Hearthstone, despite having a pretty grim outlook as of late, has seen net bookings grow thanks to the single-player content of the Rise of Shadows expansion, which, in fairness, was quite magnificently designed. I really did think it was very good quality. Now, on this end, expect the cadence of content updates to increase, as they seem to believe their investment in developing resources is working out for them. They also do seem to have faith in the single-player Hearthstone performance in particular, which I imagine is because of them selling, well, very well-designed content for the recent expansion, rather than just some new cards, and I think that's probably a good way for them to go in the future. Then specifically for World of Warcraft, Classic is on the horizon, and they have an interesting approach here. Rather than considering it to be a new product launch, they instead are talking about just the huge amount of WoW content that it is. They're expecting large subscriber growth because of targeting awareness among the 100 million lifetime players of World of Warcraft, and we're already seeing this idea in action, as they've been giving out free level boosts to inactive accounts that are in that ecosystem before Classic's launch. Now, they do admit that they have no idea how much Classic will sustain engagement, which I imagine is why they're really trying to blend both current and Classic WoW players together, instead of making them two sort of separate products. Activision-Blizzard also claim to have a lot of faith in the Overwatch League, saying that it is just capturing the young demographic and that they are watching the Overwatch League instead of traditional sports. There's not much more to say here, although the Overwatch League's growth seemingly is not matched in-game, with monthly active users remaining, quote, relatively stable, despite engagement going up because of the new workshop mode added to Overwatch. That doesn't bode well as much as this Overwatch League hype exists for them. I mean, Overwatch as a game just feels so neglected at this stage, and that's why I think that for BlizzCon they almost certainly have Overwatch 2 in the works, or at least something pretty massive for that franchise. I mean, they certainly haven't been applying their new fast content update strategy to Overwatch, and I think that can only mean they are focusing on their next big move. Now, on the topic of BlizzCon, this year is likely to be massive. As Bobby said, they are aiming for this to be their best BlizzCon yet, and I think that means only one thing: huge announcements for their most important franchises. Given they mention Warcraft, Hearthstone, Overwatch, and Diablo by name, I imagine we're going to get substantial news on all fronts. I would guess at minimum you're going to get a World of Warcraft expansion, or at least a huge patch 8.3 reveal, although that might happen a little bit earlier. You're definitely going to get a new Hearthstone expansion, I think Overwatch 2 in whatever form it takes, and I think the most definite thing is Diablo 4. Actually, Diablo and a WoW expansion. That is, I think, 100% locked in, and probably Overwatch 2. I think Overwatch is the least known quantity here, although there have been rumblings that the next Overwatch game is going to be PvE focused, which does leave them open to running the two games concurrently, I suppose as they're doing with World of Warcraft and Classic. It'll certainly be interesting to see what happens there, although I don't expect anything groundbreaking. It's Blizzard, so I imagine just, solid Blizzard quality, and that's pretty much it. Then as for King, well, they're continuing their dominance, but that is to be expected. Candy Crush is the king of mobile in the West and remains that way thanks to the IP's strength and constant flow of content. Basically, right, to put this all together, Activision-Blizzard are onto what they believe is a very strong strategy. I suppose what I find interesting is how they seemingly don't care too much about diversifying their portfolio as much as they did before, outside of the addition of the remasters. Maybe their renewed faith in the current franchises and the addition of their remastering strategy is enough to do well for them, or maybe their new IP initiatives are coming along well. It's kind of hard to tell there. At any rate, expect to see everything they are doing currently, but more, and with more opportunities to purchase in-game items. That really seems to be a core of their business model at this stage. I think this approach of free-to-play with a buy-in is really what they're trying to operate here, right? They're going to ask you to buy a game at full price, and then they're just immediately going to pivot to a free-to-play model. They're going to update the game for free, and they're going to shove in monetization at every opportunity. Yes, technically it will be optional, but as we saw with Black Ops 4, well, there are pay-to-win things in loot boxes, and that is not okay. Activision across the board, though, seem to be getting a baseline out of players regularly and then getting whales to top up that revenue with their sort of wild monetization practices. And that makes it reasonably easy to discuss, as we've had years to talk about the free-to-play model. We know how it works. In the worst case, it means exactly what it does in mobile. Bad games using psychological trickery to fund themselves through whales. In the best case, it results in many players getting a solid experience for free, funded by everyone chipping in a little bit of money for what they think is worth, and that, funds the game. Good examples of that would be Path of Exile and Warframe, with the bulk being carried by, the more dedicated or wealthy players. As to where Activision's implementation is going to lie between those extremes, Black Ops 4 does give you an idea, and it really isn't that good at all, is it? Now, it's worth noting that this entire earnings call is basically Activision playing to their strengths to butter up the investors and brushing their own failures under the rug. Despite all of this talk of growing engagement, their monthly active users are down. From Q1 to Q2, they lost 8 million MAUs despite adding new content to their games. Blizzard are stable from Q1 but have lost 5 million monthly users from last year, and given World of Warcraft's sub growth seems to be up a little bit, I guess those losses are between Overwatch and Hearthstone, although perhaps BlizzCon will be able to do enough to revitalize that number. Now, on the financial side, while they say they've beaten expectations, well, that was their own weak estimates, and their next quarter estimates are also quite low. And from a public relations optics perspective, yes, they said their costs were lower, but, everybody knows it's because they gave 800 plus people the boot. Analysts from across the sector, though, seem to be a bit disappointed in their performance, and their revenue is down notably from last year, although they explain this away by saying that Battle for Azeroth and Destiny 2 Forsaken release sales counted for an abnormal high. As for how the markets reacted, well, I think it might be a better indicator of just how things have went, and their stock price fell 3% immediately because of their weak guidance for the next quarter, but then it recovered swiftly, meaning basically business as usual. It seems that Bobby and his boys are doing their job, and that can mean a few different things for you and I. I'm worried about what they're doing with monetization here. It's already causing issues for the consumer, the player perspective for a lot of their games. I think that is pretty worrying. Now, more content updates faster, that is a good thing, so there's a push and pull there. As with other free-to-play games and live service games, the real kicker here is the conscious knowledge that the game is being funded by what they will refer to as whales, and we need to consider if that's the direction that we want our AAA games to go in. I think what's clear, though, is games don't cost $60 per player anymore. That is not the expectation from these companies. So let me know what you think below. Are you happy for essentially the, as they say, the whales to pay for a game being constantly updated and just everyone getting free content, or would you rather see, a more traditional DLC model? I'd love to know where you think the industry should lie in that one. So let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching today's video, and with that, I will see you next time.